It had been 54 years since Evelyn last saw Thomas Whitaker. She still remembered the way he ran his fingers through his hair when he was nervous, how he walked her home every day after school, and how he whispered he loved her under the autumn. Leaves the night before he left for college. He never came back. Life had pulled them in opposite directions. She stayed in their small town, married a kind man named Richard, raised 2 children, and became a librarian. Thomas, from what she occasionally heard through others, had gone on to live a fast-paced life in Chicago. Law school, big firm, no family anyone knew of. Now Evelyn was 74, a widow for 5 years, her hair silver and hands lined with time. She lived in the same house her children were born in, now quiet and filled with memories. Most days were spent tending her, garden, reading, or attending her weekly knitting group at the community center. Then came the letter. It arrived in a plain envelope with a Chicago postmark. The handwriting was shaky but familiar, almost boyish in its loops. "Dear Evelyn, I'm not sure if this will reach you. I wasn't even sure you still lived in Willow Creek, but I had to try. If it's not too strange, I'd like to see you again. I'll be in town for the Willow Creek Fall Festival this October. I know it's been a lifetime, no pressure, but I'll be there, under the old oak tree. Saturday at 3. Still hoping, Tom Evelyn read it 3 times, her hands trembling. The oak tree, their tree, the one beside the old bandstand where they'd carved their initials during junior year, where he'd kissed her before leaving. She sat in her kitchen for over an hour, the letter beside her tea, untouched. A part of her wanted to rip it up. Another part wanted to believe the boy from her youth still lived in the man who wrote that letter. When Saturday came, Evelyn wore a navy blue coat and tucked the letter into her purse. She walked slowly, each step heavy with questions. Would he recognize her? Would she recognize him? Would it hurt? Would it heal? The fall festival was already bustling when she arrived. Children darted between booths with caramel apples, music floated on the crisp air, and the trees were cloaked in orange and gold. And then she saw him. He stood alone beneath the oak. Taller than she remembered, but slightly stooped. His hair was more white than silver now, but the eyes, those eyes hadn't changed. Still soft, still searching. He saw her and smiled. "Evelyn," he said, voice gravelly but warm. "You came." She didn't speak, just walked toward him, every second peeling back the years. When she reached him, she managed, "You still look like the boy who broke my heart." He chuckled, the sound shaky. "And you still look like the girl I regretted leaving every day since." There were no fireworks, no dramatic tears, just 2 people once in love, now old, scarred but alive. "I don't know what I expected," she said honestly. "Me neither, but maybe we can figure it out. Together." She hesitated. "Why now?" He looked up at the leaves, overhead, fluttering like memories. "Because I don't want to leave this world with more regrets. And because I never stopped loving you, Evie. Not really." And somehow, in that crisp autumn air, her heart, tired, quiet for years, fluttered to life again. They walked together for a while, slowly, as if relearning how to be near each other. The fairground buzzed around them. Laughter, music, children, squealing at hay rides and pumpkin tosses. But for Evelyn and Thomas, it felt like a quiet island amidst the noise. Their steps were careful, not from hesitation but from age. Neither tried to fill the silence too quickly. There was a kind of reverence in their quiet, like both knew how easily this moment might not have happened at all. "I always loved the fall festival," Evelyn said after a while, looking at the booths. "We used to sneak out of class to help set up." Tom grinned. "You'd pretend to forget your apron, so I'd have to walk you home." She smiled, brushing a stray hair from her cheek. "You always brought 2. One for me, one for when I forgot mine." "Still the most forward I've ever been," he admitted. They stopped at a bench near the edge of the green. It was old, creaky, like their knees, but it held. Evelyn sat first, smoothing her coat. Thomas sat beside her with a small wince. "I used to think about this moment," he said. "More times than I can count." "Then why didn't you write sooner?" Tom looked down at his hands. Shame, pride, fear. She didn't rush him. "I thought you'd moved on, built a life without me." "And you had," he said. "I didn't want to intrude. And to be honest, I was scared you'd hate." "But I did," she said plainly. "For a while, I didn't understand how you could just go." He nodded. "I was young and stupid. Law school in Chicago felt like a dream I couldn't pass up. I told myself you'd follow me eventually. You never asked me to." "I know." He exhaled. "I kept waiting for the right time to fix things. Years passed, then decades, and then I was just a man with a desk full of work and no one to share anything with." Evelyn turned slightly to look at him. "I married Richard a few years after you left. He was gentle, kind. We had a good life." Tom gave a soft smile. "I'm glad you were loved." "I was," she said, "and I loved him, but it was different." They sat with that for a moment, how life branched out, how different loves could be true in different ways. "I never married," Tom said. "Came close once. But I could never give someone my whole heart. It always felt like it had been given away already." Evelyn looked down at their hands. Her fingers were wrinkled and thin, the veins prominent. She had lived a long, full life, but something inside her stirred now, something she thought was buried with her youth. "You wrote in the letter that you'd be here, but you didn't know if I'd come." He chuckled. "I almost turned around when I got off the bus." She smiled faintly. "I almost didn't open the letter." A gust of wind sent a flurry of golden leaves dancing past their feet. Tom looked over at her. "Do you think it's too late to try again?" Evelyn didn't answer right away. Finally, she reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph, folded and worn at the edges. It was of the two of them at 17, sitting under the same oak tree, her head on his shoulder, his hand in hers. She held it out. "This is the last picture we ever took." He took it gently, his eyes misting. "You kept it?" "I never could bring myself to throw it away." He looked at her, not the girl in the photo, but the woman beside him, time etched across her. "Skin, grace in every breath. I don't know what the future looks like," he said, "but I'd like to spend whatever time I have left finding out with you." Evelyn stood slowly. Her knees cracked and she laughed. "Well, you better keep up. I walk the trail by the lake every morning." Tom grinned as he stood beside her. "Then that's where I'll be." They walked away from the festival, hand in hand, two silhouettes moving through falling leaves, not picking up where they left off, but starting something new. The lake trail hadn't changed much in 70 years, at least not to Evelyn. She knew every curve, every cracked stone, every overgrown patch of wildflowers trying to reclaim the path. It was the one place that had never let her down, not even when people had. She walked it nearly every morning, sometimes alone, sometimes with a friend from her book club. But today, Thomas was waiting at the trailhead. He wore a soft wool cap and a jacket a little too thin for the crisp morning chill. When she arrived, he smiled like a boy seeing his crush for the first time at a school dance. "You came," she said. "I wasn't going to miss a chance to embarrass myself trying to keep up." She chuckled and offered him her thermos. "Coffee?" He took a sip. "Still the way you used to make it. Just enough sugar to make your dentist nervous." They started walking side by side. The gravel crunched beneath their steps. Birds stirred in the trees above, and the lake shimmered through the mist like a secret waiting to be told. "You used to hum when you walked," Thomas said after a while. "Do you still?" She hesitated, then softly began to hum an old tune, the one she used to play on the piano at school assemblies. He joined in halfway through, his voice low and raspy but still familiar. They rounded a bend and reached the bench that overlooked the lake. The same bench where they'd once sat after prom, sharing a milkshake and dreams of a future that never quite came to pass. They sat again, older now, quieter. "Do you ever think about what might have happened?" "If I'd stayed," he asked. She looked out at the lake. "I used to, but not lately." "Why not?" she shrugged. "Because the version of you in my memories was perfect, and the version of me then, she would have ruined it anyway. We weren't ready. Maybe we never would have made it." Tom looked at her, surprised. "You really think that?" "I think," she said, "that I spent a lot of time missing someone who didn't exist anymore. And now I get to know the real you again. Maybe for the first time." He was quiet a moment. "Well, the real me gets up 3 times a night to pee, forgets names more than I'd like, and falls asleep in front of documentaries." She laughed. "Sounds familiar. I knit through entire murder mysteries without knowing who the killer was." They both laughed, deep from the gut laughter that felt like forgiveness. After a pause, Evelyn said, "My daughter's visiting this weekend." Thomas turned to her, a bit surprised. "Do you want me to disappear?" "Do I want you to disappear?" she echoed. "No, but I want to introduce you the right way. She knows about you, vaguely. I never talked much about the past." "That's okay," he said. "You don't owe me anything." "I know," she said gently, "but I'd like you to meet her. Maybe we take it slow, one step at a time." He nodded, looking back out at the water. "That's all I've ever wanted, Ev. A step, then another. No more running." A breeze passed between them, cool and fragrant with pine and wet leaves. Evelyn reached over and took his hand, this time without hesitation. They sat there as the sun began to rise higher, casting golden light on the lake and the two figures who, despite all the years lost, had found their way back to each other. Not because they had to, but because they still could. The afternoon sun filtered through the kitchen window as Evelyn stirred a pot of soup. The smells of rosemary, thyme, and slow-cooked chicken filled the cozy space. A soft hum played from the old radio on the counter, jazz from another era. She still hummed along without realizing it. From the dining room, the sound of voices drifted in. 2 distinct ones. Her daughter Claire was laughing, and Thomas, ever the charmer, was mid-story. "And I swear to you, the goat chased me across 3 fences. Barefoot. Evelyn had to rescue me with a broom." Claire's laughter was surprised and genuine. "Mom never told me that one." Evelyn smiled. She let the moment breathe before stepping in, wiping her hands on a towel. "He's exaggerating. It was 2 fences." Thomas grinned at her. "I was trying to impress you." Heroic acts of goat evading. Claire looked between them, something warm in her eyes. "You two are—" She paused, searching. "It's weird, but good. It suits you. After lunch?" Claire pulled Evelyn aside while Thomas went out back to water the potted herbs. "Mom," Claire said gently, "do you love him?" Evelyn took a breath. "I don't know what to call it yet. But yes, I think I do." Claire nodded slowly. "Okay. Then I'm happy for you, just don't let the past keep you from being happy now." Evelyn smiled. "That's the plan." The seasons turned. Summer gave way to autumn again. Thomas moved into the guest room first. For practicality, he claimed. But gradually, the lines blurred. He made breakfast every other day, left little folded notes in the book she was reading, and strung lights on the porch, even though it was only October. They took evening walks, some short, some long, some in silence, others filled with laughter and memories and daydreams of nothing more than tomorrow. One chilly evening, as the leaves turned burnt orange and gold, Thomas handed her a small box. No ring inside, just a tiny carved key on a chain. "What's this?" Evelyn asked, brow raised. "My spare key," he said. "To the house, to my heart, whatever poetic nonsense you prefer." She chuckled. "You old romantic. He leaned in and kissed her cheek. "I wasted a lot of time not being in your life, Ev. I'm not wasting any more." Evelyn closed her fingers around the key. It didn't feel like a second chance. It felt like a second spring. Not a do-over, not an erasure of time, but a soft, forgiving chapter in a story that still had pages left. Together, they faced the rest of their days, not as what they once were, but as who they had become, resilient, wiser, and still capable of wonder.